Yes, T, new background. Yes, good observation. Yes, so I'm in a new place in this beautiful home, this mansion in Seacliff neighborhood in San Francisco, thanks to my wonderful sponsors, the Rugged Elegance Foundation. So I've just came back. I was on a trip. That's why I'm kind of getting slowly started getting back acclimatized to my regular life here in the San Francisco Bay Area. I was out on a tour, and some of you who have been joining my sessions in the past year know that I built this camper van. So I just kind of, sitting at home, quarantined like most of us everywhere across the world, and I'm very used to be traveling and doing things on the road. And I found myself just, sitting at home, not able to do what I love most, which is to explore and share and learn constantly. So I picked up this van, which I basically used to be a passenger van that used to be a shuttle limousine for the airport. And I pulled out the seats and made it into this, what I consider to be a very artistic little creation. I put a full kitchen, a full toilet, bathroom, and everything, and bedroom, and really the whole works. So I could take all my kite surfing gear with me, and I drove down to the coast. So after 4 months of working on the build, I took it down to the border because I don't know if you all know this, but non-essential travel across borders now is pretty much not allowed. So I went as far as I could. I went down to San Diego. I had some issues with yeah, Elizabeth, I'd love to see it. I'm obsessed with camper vans. So yeah, so I think every that's the way to do it these days, right? We can't, really travel much on planes, and we can, but there's not a whole lot of. When you get to the other end, it's just so risky even to get on a plane, let alone hotels and restaurants and this and that. So it was an idea by a friend of mine who grew up with me, and I was looking for a vehicle to take all of my kite surfing gear and go up and down the coast here in San Francisco. He says, "Why are you wasting your time and money buying a SUV? You should actually get a camper van." And so I did. So I ended up not finding something that I really liked. So I picked up a passenger van, as I mentioned, and then actually completely stripped it down to its bare bones, bare shell, and used a 3D designing software and built it all the way up. And it's really, I'm very pleased with how it's come out. But the drama doesn't end there. So as I was getting down to, yeah, nerd, yes, yeah, total geek, right? So putting some of my engineering skills, which I don't use much anymore now in my life as a yogi and as a meditation teacher, I put some of those skills into use in building this camper van. But I was saying that, so I was driving down to San Diego. About halfway down the way, I experienced some engine trouble because, think about it. I just bought the van. It's sitting outside my house in Cupertino, and I was essentially just parked there, and I would just take it every so often to, get some gas or, go to Home Depot. Became my second home. And I started building it out. And then when I went on this premier tour, I had engine issues. And turns out it's a recall that Ford announced, which I didn't know about, and limped my way into a dealership, went straight in there. And it's been sitting at the dealership, believe it or not, for the last 21 days. The 31st of December is when I dropped it off. And it they said it was ready, started driving, and just outside San Diego, those of you know Southern California, I reached Encinitas, and boom, the check engine sign came on again, and I called the dealership, and they asked me to come back in. Anyway, seems like you guys are like, you're really indulging me getting the stories out, which I was not planning to share, but looks like there's clearly you're coming in clear from Los Angeles. Shannon, thank you. Yeah. So yes, so my camper van is still sitting in San Diego at the dealership, and I flew back because I'm working on a very exciting project. So those of you who recognize my new background, so I'm in this beautiful mansion here in the Seacliff neighborhood in San Francisco because I've been blessed to be invited by this wonderful couple, Jen and Tim King Friedel, Jennifer King and Tim Friedel, her husband. The Rugged Elegance Foundation, they have invited me to work on this just God awesome. Just as my life's work coming to fruition. So I'm working for the next, at least for the next 1 year, on spiritual solutions to climate change. So where I will be interviewing thought leaders, first because of the pandemic, people who live in and around the Bay Area, really getting them out of their head and into their heart space, and fostering, harvesting ideas and how we can appeal to the heart of humanity to really bring about a shift. I mean, there's so much division, so much polarization around the idea of anything that comes from facts, science, and data. The moment you talk about things like climate change, there's like, well, half the people don't believe in it. Some people don't want to, they think it's a farce. And so we don't want to, we're all in the ship together, guys. And, today marks the day when, the ship is sinking and then, you have a change in command. What does that do? It's not just going to magically, the Titanic is not just going to get fixed and it's going to start coming. It's from each of our individual efforts, that really are individual and our collective efforts, and really a relentless commitment to save our only planet, the only home that we know, the only place that we've ever documented anything in history that, past, present, or future, that we can imagine, is all sitting here tied to this one little blue ball hurling out in space. So my privilege and honor is to work with thought leaders in the space, and in government, and really policymakers and leaders in the business, leaders in the community, to be able to harvest ideas on how we can come together and find a way in which we can appeal to all of humanity, and not just to the right wing or the left wing, or the believers or the non-believers, the atheists or and so on and so forth. So it's just like, it's something that we need to take as if we are at war. Really, this is that kind of, it requires a war footing, and we don't have time for complacency and bickering and division and partisanship. We really need to all come together. And today, as you all know, marks a beginning in the history of this country, and hopefully in a different direction, where like I said, it's there's a lot of work to be done. The ship has been badly damaged because of our action. It's we humans have really created this chaos, have created this situation that we find ourselves in, and we are the ones, if at all, to rectify, to come together and really heal. And the healing, why is this called we call it the day to heal, the day to breathe, in this idea to work with some of our existential crises. And climate change is one of them, right? We can think about it. At the heart of humanity, the soul of humanity, we're so broken, we're so fractured, we're so disconnected, that all of the ailments that we see in society today, whether it's economic disparity, social injustice, racial inequality, gender, whether it is climate change or political distrust and war and religious intolerance, etc. See, these are all inside the soul of humanity. And so as we want to see a change outside, really the change needs to begin within, right? Would you all agree with that? It starts from first of all, healing from within, that then goes on to being able to make any difference. And this is what I tell my VIP leaders who come into this. I call it the day to heal. We call it the day to heal. It's, you cannot pour what's not in your cup. You can only pour it. The other way of looking at it is that you can only pour what's in your cup. So it's so important for each of us to remember that it's important to first fill our teacups, then we can offer something to the world. Right? So that's what we're here for. You get to live there for a year. So we don't know. Yes, I mean, at the moment it's, there's this plan, there's this anticipation. Of course, a lot of little pieces need to come together. This is a gigantic endeavor. It's lots of people involved, lots of forces that are allowing this to happen. So I just take it one day at a time and just kind of be completely present and be in service and see what is it that the universe, call it God, call it the Great Spirit, call it the Supreme Force, letting it work through me. And I just know that I'm just an instrument, because the nature of this work is something that is ginormous. And one can only be grateful to be even a small conduit in this work. So, anyway, that's the story about where I've been, what I've been up to, what I'm going to be doing, what's my area of focus for this next few months, if not for a few years. Because as you all know it, I mean, this took us about 100 years to get us into this situation we are in. And obviously, it's going to take us time for us to get out. But the time is now, folks. There is no room for more delay, more complacency. We all need to step up. We all need to take whatever little bit we can do, whether it's things that we're doing at our individual level, or encouraging our communities, or encouraging our political leaders to really step up. And it all starts with us. The groundswell starts with each one of us. And so please be very thoughtful about this, because we talk about so many other issues. We talk about the racial inequality. We talk about the political the economic inequality. We talk about the pandemic. And I tell you, climate change is something that is going to make all of those things look like pocket change. It's going to be such inconsequential in the face of what is waiting to happen. And if you haven't read the reports of scientists who put together, the 90 scientists who put together the Paris Climate Treaty, please read up on it. And there is, if you are looking for some references of easy things to consume, rather than just volumes and volumes of literature to read, go and watch this Netflix documentary called Chasing Corals, right? You will get an idea of how dramatic the shift has been in the last just 10 years. And some of these things are irreversible. Scientists are saying by the year just 2040, we will lose 1 million more species than we have already lost. Completely extinct, right? So this is something that's a irreversible damage that will be done on our planet. And so for us to recognize that and do the best that we can possibly can is really the need of the hour. So I'm noticing that there's a couple of donations that have come in, and I just want you to say that this is so meaningful. It helps me to continue doing my work. There's a whole entourage, or there's a whole ecosystem of people that are supporting me in doing my work. I have a audio engineer who's based in Bosnia, and if you all don't know how the conditions of Bosnia, you talk about our country being broken, you should see the 3 governments that run that country. I was there a couple of years ago, and I'm so grateful to be able to support this one company. And they do all the sound editing. Those of you who listen to my audio meditations and my courses on Insight Timer. So my sound engineer is based in Bosnia. My video engineer, who, if you've watched any of my YouTube guided meditations, etc., that the person there who's responsible for all of that sits in Colombia in South America. Then I've got a social media person who's in Philippines. So your donations are all helping to support that. I have a web designer who sits in India. So thank you so much. Much grateful for your support. And so with that, I just want to find out, how is everybody doing? Boy, this has been a very unusual holiday that we've experienced. Quarantine, locked, mandatory stay-at-home orders. It's been let alone just the whole year has been something that has been so unusual. But, typically one would think that holidays are a time for us to be able to get away, get to family, be able to do things, the much cheer and joy and camaraderie and kinship that we experience of being together with near and dear ones has been denied for so many of us. I mean, some of us have to travel, and that's not been possible. Some of us had to quarantine and not be able to visit with family, and it's a chance. It's because of elderly people in our relationships or what have you. It's just been a very, very, very unusual time. So I'm just curious to hear how things have been for you, what's been kind of on top of your mind. I'm going to get into the topic. I mean, we still have a few minutes, but I just want to go ahead and acknowledge the very unusual time. This is my first session since the new year. Those of you who have just joined, I was sharing my story earlier about how I got quote unquote stuck in paradise in beautiful La Jolla in Southern California because of some mechanical issues with my beautiful new camper van. And so I'm just getting back to the fold of things. I'm getting back into the groove of. I did 60 sessions last year on Zoom slash YouTube Live and Insight Timer. And this is the first one I'm doing since the beginning of this year. So the first episode in 2021. So I just want to check in with you guys. I can do all the talking. You heard me talk a lot last year, but I just want to go ahead and check in to see how's everybody doing and, what is important for you, what's on top of your mind right now. So it's an opportunity to strengthen spiritual practice. Dana is saying the shift in energy is good. There are fireworks going off here in Puget Sound. Wonderful. Yes, felt hopeful and happy today. Definite energy shift in the universe for the good, says Anne. A daily meditation, the chakra session that you have on YouTube. I'll listen to it going to sleep at least 3 times a week. Fantastic. Yes, you never know what's going to appeal to people, right? So I've covered, like I said, 60 different sessions, different topics, things that I've been kind of churning on for the last 18 years. I lived as a monk and, had this time to deepen my understanding of certain very, very core and ancient subjects. At the same time, I think of it from an engineer's perspective. I'm being trained as an engineer. I'll try to see what is the relevance of that ancient wisdom in the context of modern times. And then I try to process that. And that's essentially what I share with folks here on these live sessions. So no, I do appreciate it that, you never know what's going to touch people. And it's also different times, different parts of, your own journey and different phases of the year. There may be different things. And so I just come up and share with you whatever I'm feeling most called to. With that said, today's topic is the power of presence. And so Anne mentioned something about, the shift in energy can be felt in the universe and is a shift for good. So I want to talk about this thing that, has been really making the rounds on social media today, which is, something which is, I think, very, very profound. You might have heard about this 22-year-old poet from Los Angeles, Amanda Gorman, who spoke today at the inauguration of the president. And she basically read a beautiful poem which ended with these words: "There is always light, if only we are brave enough to see it. There's always light if we are only brave enough to be it." How true, how much more powerful. I mean, this couldn't have been more well said than that. Is that we all have the light. The light is always there. It's not the absence of light. It's not it's not the darkness that we need to get away from, as in the beautiful words of Martin Luther King Jr. It's really about us shining the light that's within us and owning that, taking responsibility to say that we are the ones who are getting in the way of our light. So I'm going to share with you a story from 16th century India on this topic of, the light that we are. So there is a famous king who ruled India by the name of Akbar. And Akbar was known for the 10 jewels that he had. So these are the jewels in his court. So these were all wise people who all had different talents, and they brought different aspects to the table, and that made him the great king that he is. And particularly out of all those jewels in his court, there was Birbal, who was his wise minister. And so Birbal was known to have this incredible way to bring out wisdom and put it through simple stories and simple metaphors in which that not only the king, but the rest of the kingdom could relate to it. So one day, King Akbar and his minister Birbal are walking through the countryside. It's winter, it's really cold, and then they're walking by a river. And as they're strolling along this beautiful river, Birbal makes this point. He says, it's incredible how human beings can do things that are unbelievable for their self-sustenance. And so King Akbar looks at him and says, "Really?" And then he puts his finger into the water, and it's icy cold water in the river. And he says, "Okay, so let's see if we can test your statement, just this, comment that you just made and see if that can hold true. I don't believe that any human can stay here overnight dipped in this water up to his neck for the sake of making money. So here I'm going to make a challenge here. He offers 500 gold nuggets to anybody who's willing to stay overnight in that frigid water without, the condition is this, without anything to keep themselves warm. So they can't use any device to be able to fight the cold. And so the proclamation is made and the word spreads all across the kingdom, and people get to hear about it, that there is this challenge that the king wants somebody to be able to stand overnight in that water without the support of anything external, and he or she who makes it will get 500 gold nuggets. So everybody thinks about, people in the countryside, they say, I mean, that's crazy. There's no way we can do that. And nobody steps up. Except there's this one poor Brahmin who's so poor that he hasn't had a home. He's been living, in the countryside. He's been living in the forest and living under trees and so on. He hears about it and he says, I have nothing to lose. I mean, my life is not worth that much anyway. Let me go ahead and take up this challenge. So this wise Brahmin, or this poor Brahmin, comes up and he says, here I am. I'm willing to take this test. And so the king orders his guards to accompany this poor Brahmin out to the river and says, keep a watchful eye and make sure that this guy does not skip, does not use any tricks to, pass this test, and make sure that he actually spends the entire night in the water up to his neck. So the poor Brahmin steps into the water. It's about dusk time, and then the clock begins, and the fellow is standing there. His mouth is, teeth are chattering, and he's cold, and he's standing there in the cold, and then the sunrise comes up, and he's still there. He walks out of the river. He's still alive, and then the guards take him to the king's court and present him before the king. So the king is astonished at this point. He says, how could you have possibly done this? What was your trick? And the poor Brahmin says, I don't really have any trick, but what I did was I was sitting there in the cold winter night in the water, and then I turned towards the king's palace, and I could see that there was a lamp that was burning, and I kept my focus on the lamp. And my focus on the lamp basically was my source of warmth. So that's how that was my source of inspiration to be able to get through the night. And the king says, see, that's the thing. I told you should not be using any support to keep you warm. So you actually use the lamp on the shore, on the banks of the river, on the palace, and therefore you have violated the clause to not use any sources of support. Listening to that, Birbal is very disappointed, but he does not want to embarrass the king in front of the court, and especially in front of this poor Brahmin who's now obviously gutted, and he's shattered that he hasn't been able to get the price that he has worked so hard to earn. So the day passes. The court is dismissed. The next day, King Akbar comes back into his court, and it's morning, it's time to adjourn, and he sees that his favorite minister, Birbal, is missing. And so he calls and asks, where is Birbal? And they say that, he's not here. So he sends the guards, and the guards go and find out that Birbal sends a word back saying that I'm having breakfast, and until the breakfast is ready and until I eat it, I cannot become present in the court. So the king hears that and says, okay, sure enough. And then he waits, and there's no sign of Birbal. It's almost approaching middle of the day. And he says, what kind of breakfast is that's not going to be ready? So the king decides that he's going to go to the minister's house to check out what exactly is going on. And upon arrival at the minister's house, he sees something really surprising. He sees Birbal sitting there under a tree, and he's tending to a little fire, like a bonfire, and he's putting little twigs in there. And he's creating, he's kindling this fire. And the king asks him, so where is your breakfast that, you're waiting to finish? And the Birbal points, can you see that up on the tree? And he has, high up on the tree, he has this pot that's got food in it. Then he says that I'm trying to cook it using the fire from the ground. And the king says, are you crazy? How is this fire ever going to warm things up there? It was such a big distance. And he says, well, if you think that the poor Brahmin could get heat from the lamp on the palace standing in the middle of the river, why can't this flame reach the pot on top of the tree? So the penny drops, the king gets it, he realizes it, and he says, okay, he calls that poor Brahmin, he says, I'm going to give you 1,000 gold nuggets for having taught me this lesson instead of the 500. So folks, I want you to think about this idea of the light that's shown to keep the Brahmin warm in the middle of the water, to give him solace. How we can all have that light within us that is sometimes called presence. Now, presence is different from being present. Present is that state of being mentally conscious of the here and now. But what we're here to talk about is something different. It is the presence which you might have experienced. There's somebody walks into the room, and before they say or do anything, you can feel a vibration. You can feel an electricity. You can feel a magnetic energy just because of their being. And I'm sure at some point in your life, you have been that source of presence for someone else. So now, for the next few minutes, I want to discuss the concepts that helps you to either be that presence or not. What facilitates that and what gets in the way of that. So let's look at three things that help you to create that sense of presence. So presence is a beauty. So there's a beauty to presence, that this presence is not, this is the beauty that's not just the physical looks. Well, that has its place, the aesthetics and the perfection of the face and the figure, but this is the beauty of the soul, beauty of your being. It's something that radiates from your natural state of who you are, that attracts people whether they can hear you, understand you, see you or not. We all have that. We all have that magnetic force. And that's why sometimes, you know how we see that in little glimpses when we experience a resonance with somebody that we've never met, a kindred spirit that comes into our connection, that there's an automatic recognition. What is that? So that's a resonance of your spirit with theirs. It's your vibration with theirs. So whether you realize it or not, we are all radiating some energy. And upon cultivating that, we could all be radiating this beauty at all times, all around us. The second thing around presence is this idea of light. Now, if you think about it, what does light do? So light has this way, this beautiful capacity to be able to spread and fill within the space that it's in. A light is a source of energy that just does not be around the light bulb or the lamp or the candle. It has a way of propagating It has a way of spreading in a way that it will fill the space as long as there is no obstacle, as long as there's no obstruction, something getting in the way of it. Such is the nature of our light, our inner light. And the third thing is, there is a way in which it has a 360-degree effect. A 360-degree effect in that it radiates in all directions equally, unconditionally, without looking at who you are, whether you believe in me or not, whether you agree with me philosophically or not, politically, religiously, it doesn't matter. Presence is something that radiates in all directions without asking questions. So now, let's talk about why can we not always be present? What gets in the way? Why can we not always have this aura that's illuminating and inspiring those in 360 degrees around us at all times? The first thing that gets in the way is being caught up in the mind. Now, the mind is a very powerful tool. We are blessed with it. We are the only species on the planet that's known to have this thing that's capable of forecasting, predicting, analyzing, for us to be able to time travel, for us to be able to predict, for us to be able to create a concept that is non-existential. It's not physically present. So it's like a sandbox. The mind is incredible. It's a laboratory in which amazing things have been created that has made us the most dominant species on the planet. But here's where the problem is. When you use your mind, instead of being that as a tool that facilitates the creation of things, instead we get lost in our mind. That's when there is these shadows. So we create these images, we create these ideas, we create this wants and needs. And then what happens is then we begin to get stuck with those. We begin to identify those with those figments of our own imagination. And that attachment to these ideas, these constructs of your own creation, become those obstacles I was talking about a little earlier. So light can spread as long as there's no obstacle. So where are the obstacles? Created in your head. By whom? By oneself. So when we can see those things as a detached observer and says, there's ideas that are coming, it's beautiful. They're very creative, they're very constructive, they're taking us forward, they're helping us to solve incredible things in life, helping us to be extremely creative. But I let them come, I learn something, let them go. As long as I'm not getting attached to them, I'm able to stay in my ability to be radiant and be the best of my presence at any given point in time. And the second thing that gets in the way is running stories in your head. I did an entire episode about this last year. But essentially, we are all playing some story in our head at all times. So you got to ask yourself, am I so caught up in the narrative that I'm playing, and what kind of a story am I playing? What kind of a story am I telling myself, about my journey? And do I realize it's only a story and not the reality? So the more I'm caught up in what the screen of the mind is playing, the less I'm able to be present with what is here and now. I'm lost in those stories. So how can I be able to be radiant in my presence? So it's important for us to catch ourselves. And we know it's a muscle in a way of its own, where we're so used to be playing these stories in our head and being lost in them, being entertained so much, so distracted, and keep getting lost in it. We actually prefer to get lost in the stories of our own mind, because sometimes reality is so harsh. Reality is sometimes very difficult to be able to absorb and appreciate for what it is. So it's like constantly pulling up windows, you think about your desktop, and you never ever close them, but what you keep doing is flipping from one window to the next. Guess what? After a period of time, the CPU is going to get overloaded and with time to shut down. God forbid, through some sort of an ailment. So it becomes one's responsibility to notice when too many stories are beginning to crop up, wherein which I do not take the time to close one thing properly before I begin to embark on the next story that's I am involved with in my mind. So a presencing practice is very, very important to be able to catch yourself from simply living inside your head, which is really, in another way of saying, that's the obstacle between you and your magnificence, your presence, from spreading its beauty, its love, its peace. You know how sometimes you feel that sense of just being pure love, that's all it is. Or you feel perhaps sometimes being in the presence of somebody you may not be related to, you may not ever have met before. And a lot of times people meet folks like the Dalai Lama or some other person like Mother Teresa, and they will tell me that, oh my God, I've never felt enveloped before that person said one word. We were just completely held in their aura of love, because they had that kind of a practice. They had that ability to switch off the stories that are playing in the head and become completely present with the person or the people that they're with. And so they are experiencing what is actually quite natural and inherent in each one of us. We all are capable of it. We only need to look for those obstacles, those barriers, those blinders that we have built, those walls, those scabs, those wounds. Sometimes these things come from past trauma. Something has hurt me somewhere, so I build this scab, and I don't want anybody to touch it. I don't want anybody to see it. I don't want anybody to come close to it. I don't want to protect that scab, keep it there intact, because I'm scared that if something touches it, it's going to really be hurtful. Not allowing it to heal in that process. And so that scab becomes that barrier between the light that you are and the light of source. Call it by whatever name. And then there comes moments, serendipitous events, where that shell is broken, that egg is cracked, or that wound is ruptured again. And it hurts, it sucks. But you know what? Therein lies the opportunity, through that crack, through that split, through that wound, for the light of source to touch the light of me, the soul, for true healing, for true resolution, for complete rejuvenation of the human spirit. But we got to trust, we got to be brave. Again, back to the words of the beautiful Amanda Gorman today. We have to be brave to be the light that we are. It's always there. So folks, with that, I'd like to turn this into a meditation in which I will teach you a very simple exercise on how to cultivate presence. And before I do that, I just want to see how's everybody doing. Distractions of thoughts, avoiding the fact of self. Yes, yeah, fantastic. So let's go and jump into the meditation. And before I jump into the meditation, I want us to do a small stretching exercise. You guys have been sitting and listening to me here for the last 42 minutes. So why don't we do a nice big shoulder roll? I want you to lift your shoulders as high as you can, and then drop them, making a rotation nice and as big of a circle. And I want you to use breath also to synchronize with it. So as you're breathing in, lift your shoulders up. And as you're exhaling, I want you to drop your shoulders down. Nice and big. Breathing in through the nostrils and then breathing out through the mouth. And now I want you to reverse the direction of this turn of shoulders. I want you to now, if you're going from front to back, let's go from back to front. Lifting up, breathing in, dropping shoulders, breathing out. Let's rock our necks, bobbing our heads to the left and right. Breathing in as you're going in one direction and breathing out as you come towards the center and out to the other direction. Front to back. Again, breathing in as you're going back and breathing out as you're going forward. And then I want you to please settle into your body. And I'm going to play some gentle music as I'm going to lead you from your body into your heart space. With your arms rested, with your neck and head held high, shoulders dropped. Continue this beautiful, deep, rhythmic breathing that we started. Deep into the belly, exhaling through the mouth. Breathing in through the nostrils and exhaling through the mouth. Nostrils have a way to filter the air as we're inhaling it. As you exhale, you can use your mouth to completely let go. Breathing in the fresh, much needed oxygen that is the source of every cell in your body. It's the food that nurtures and keeps all the organs every little particle, the skin, the hair, the nails, alive. Breath is such a wonderful thing, so essential. And it's a beautiful anchor to turn your attention from the world outside in towards the world inside. As you begin to take in these deep, comfortable breaths, notice how your body is beginning to relax. Your mind is beginning to slow down. Because there's a deep connection between breath, the mind, and the body. As you slow down your breath, you slow your mind. And as you slow your mind, you slow your body. And the converse of that is also true. That as you slow your mind, you can slow down your breath. But the mind is sometimes so hard to bring into control, so hard to master, that breath becomes a great gateway through which we can enter into the state of calm. And if you find yourself wandering into some thought and activity, just tell yourself that it's part of the process, so don't feel guilty, but gently bring your attention back to your breath, and breath will bring you back to the here and now. There's an old saying, the past is history, the future is a mystery, and the present is a gift. It's a gift or a present that's here for us to cherish. It's the only thing there really is at any time. Now, from this state of calmness, I want you to consciously invoke on the screen of your mind someone you've had a hard, rough, or unpleasant interaction with. Now, as you see this person, do not let the story play. Just bring the person and avoid getting lost in the story. And from the depth of your heart, from the light of your being, from the radiance of your spirit, let us send blessings to this soul. May they be well. May complete peace reign in their life. May health reign in their body. May equanimity reign in their mind. May all suffering in their life be removed. As you are sending this healing light, you're essentially doing two things. You're sending positive vibrations to this soul such that they can see themselves in better light as it pertains to your relationship with them. And second, you're healing this wound that was inflicted in your relationship with this person, such that when you see them again, you see them in positive light. You do not let the old story dictate the new possibilities. Now let's take this one step further and let's send this healing energy to the entire planet and all the beings on it. So I want you to invoke the image of the beautiful blue bulb that's floating in space called planet Earth, rotating ever so gently in its magnetic shades, magnificent shades of red, green, and blue. And just like a cool moonlight, let's send a blessing to the entire planet. This cool moonlight touches everyone and everything on planet Earth, on all 7 continents, across the seas, in the forests, and in the entire animal kingdom. And this, my friends, is how you cultivate presence. This is what it means to be an angel, to be a guiding light. Because if you think about it, what does an angel do? Silently spreads its light. Silently inspires goodness with everyone it touches. We can all be these angels, these guiding lights, sacred spirits. And this is how you begin the practice of cultivating presence. And just whenever you're ready, I want you to please take your palms together and rub them, because the palms are a very powerful energy vortex. They have an incredible healing energy that radiates from your palms. And so I want you to put them together and create a nice warm feeling. Then I want you to cup both your eyes and bless yourself. May complete peace reign in my being. May complete health reign in my body. May equanimity reign in my mind. And may I be free of any suffering. Namaste. Thank you. And when you're ready, I just want you to please share how you feel right now. And if you can do that in one word, what would that be? I'm seeing relaxed, I'm seeing love, I'm seeing the hands folded, so I'm assuming that's gratitude. I'm feeling blessed, I'm feeling calm, content, energized, more calmness. Beautiful. Fantastic, folks. So there you go. The art of cultivating presence, the power of presence. That's actually quite natural to all of us. Putting light on them healed me, indeed, because we're all lights, we're all beings of light. And if you think about it, what I'm holding is the them concept. I'm holding some scab, like I said, Preeti. The scab is not somewhere out there, the scab is in my own mind, and it's that block that's preventing the light that I am from being completely radiant in its full bloom. So yes, as you are really blessing them, what you're actually doing is you're clearing that block in your own head that you built your own self. So yes, totally. Yes, peaceful. Yes, it heals you. Folks, I want to take a few minutes to see if there's any questions, anything that has come up that I haven't already addressed. And I want you to please type in those things, and I want you to be able to feel free to ask anything that relates to this topic or something else related to this thing called life that you feel like you want to urgently have addressed. And I'll try to do as best as I can in the given time. But while you're formulating your questions, I just want to once again thank you, those of you who already made donations, and I want you to know that this is a very important sharing of energy. We give, we take, and things that we receive can only be manifest in our lives when we know that there is a continuity of energy, that as we share is when we become capable of receiving more. So let's keep that energy flowing. And I've mentioned to you earlier, and those of you who just joined, that there is a whole ecosystem of wonderful souls in different parts of the world who support me in making these courses and sessions and recordings available, like my sound engineer in Bosnia, my video engineer in Colombia, my digital media person in the UK, my web designer in India, my social media person in the Philippines. So your donations go a long way in supporting this whole ecosystem. So thank you so much. Thank you, B. I really appreciate it for joining at 3 a.m. here in the UK. Wow. That's one of the things, folks. I've tried to find a time that works. I mean, that's really such a hard thing to be able to pick a time where it serves people across the globe. And so I just do something that, I feel like for the majority of the people who join these sessions, and, I make it available afterwards on YouTube, but I really appreciate it, B, for being in the session. Thank you so much for joining. Yes, please go to sleep and have hopefully this meditation has put you in this very beautiful delta state already. And when you fall asleep, when you meditate, I want you to know that sleep becomes an extension of your meditation. It only deepens your process. And I want you to notice for yourself how rejuvenated you will feel when you wake up, having meditated just before you fell asleep. So wonderful, good gift to yourself. So I tell you, it's going to be well worth it. So I thank you all for your time, for hanging in here with me on this first episode of my series that I'm here. I'm going to be doing a bunch of sessions. Attention as power is the theme for this new year for me. And so Power of Presence was the first of these many episodes that you're going to experience over the course of the next few months. Same time, same place. If you have any suggestions in the whole format, my setting in context, telling the story, the nuggets, the three elements that you take away today. Again, just as a reminder, I just want to go back to those three things that help you to radiate the beauty of your presence. First of all, this understanding that the beauty of your presence, of you being just naturally radiant, and this beauties of your being, and nothing to do about outside looks. Well, outside looks is maybe good, but it's really that your sense, your presence, the soul that radiates. That's the beauty I'm talking about. And the second thing we talked about is the kinship to light, the metaphor of light, that it envelops and engulfs all the space. Light has a way of filling everything that's in its way and touching everyone and everything unconditionally. Such is the nature of presence as well. And the third thing we talked about is the 360 degree. It knows no bounds. It will fill everything. It'll go in all directions, whether you want it or not. And so may you all be that beautiful sense of that beautiful beings with presence. Be that rainbow in somebody's cloud. Be that light in somebody's dark corner, dark cloud. And go out and spread this beautiful being that you are, the love, the peace, the light, the joy that you are. So with that, I take your leave. I will see you all same time, same place next week. Until then, I trust that you'll all be well, be safe, and take care.